Hi there, this is Shauna from The Foiled Fox. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have a new video showing this fancy feathered friends. As you know, Paper Tray Ink has a whole collection of birds, their Feathered Friends collection. This is number 22, and he's very graceful with these long tail feathers, and we'll be working with him today. We're also going to be working with a new item which is called the Elegant Edges and Leaves. It's very pretty. You'll see that later. This is just sentiments quotes, and then this is a set that I'll be using just the one little foliage piece. It's called Brighter Days, and I'll be using the Stampin' Die for that. And then for one of the backgrounds, I'll be using the postage border, which makes just this wonderful edging, postage stamp like edging. And then the Berry Branches stencil set, which has 4 stencils. And then one of my all-time faves, which is the Into the Blooms. And I'll be using some flowers from that. So to get started, I'm going to jump in with a piece of Bristol paper. Bristol paper because I'm going to be doing some ink blending. And I'm going to cut out all the pieces of the bird. And then we're going to just spend a little time coloring him and making, really giving him the attention that he deserves. There I have a list of all the inks that I'll be using. I'm going to start out with a little bit of Berry Sorbet. Berry Sorbet is a kind of a corally pink color, and then of course some yellows up at the very top of his head, where he has those wonderful fluffy feathers on the top. And there is a piece that covers that. In fact, it's right there. I'm going to just cover that the same colors. And then you'll see way down there, there's a little piece. I'm going to take that out so it doesn't get color on it. It's part of the eye, and then there's another piece, that piece right there, that I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm just going to color it with black. You can certainly cut it out with black, but I find coloring it with a Sharpie much quicker. And then now I don't have to worry about coloring those eyes, and I can color the feet and the top of his head with a few yellows and a little touch of the pink in it as well. So you can see the colors go from yellows to pinks, and with just a dash of brown, and you'll see how I use them as we go through this. I will jump around a bit. I'm sorry for that. It's just kind of how I just see one thing and I have to jump over here and then I jump over there, but just stay with me and we'll get this whole bird all colored and looking pretty snazzy. So I'm going to just put some color on the body and on the tail. The breast, you see that I put more of the pinks, and then down further by his feet, that's going to be a little bit more orangey. The melonberry and the terracotta work nicely there. On the tail, I want the very end of the tail feathers to be darker, so I'll be using the terracotta and the autumn rose, but more at the beginning of his tail I'll use more yellows. But I just start adding color, and I know it looks kind of like a hot mess right now because it is I still keep it in this negative space, and I do that so that I don't mess up those finer pieces like the tail feathers and the legs and feet. I keep it in there about as long as I can. You can see that tail's getting darker and darker. Now there's 2 pieces here that go over the top. There's the wing right here, which I'm going to use some yellows up at the top. And then as I get further down, I'll use the darker, the Berry Sorbet, a little bit of the terracotta, and the autumn rose. Now this piece is a little bit of the breast, and so I'm going to use more of those pinks, the little bit of pale peony, and the Berry Sorbet. And then that's his beak. We're just going to really make that as yellow orange as possible. There's another piece that is right by his eye too. that I have colored with a little bit of the pinks and yellows. And now with using this cocoa bean, there are some little pieces, little tiny pieces that come out very easily. So you can see I struggled with that. So I finally just put some repositionable tape on the back to hold those in so that I can color them properly. And I'm just coloring them with a brown. Now I'm going to smush some brown onto my work surface. But first I'm going to take my brush and I'm dipping it in water off camera and then splattering this. And you can see how it's giving it a mottled look. Like I say, once I take these pieces out of their negative space, you'll really see that modeling. But I put on quite a bit of water and then blot it off. Then I will loosen up some of that brown and splatter on some brown dots everywhere. So there's that little triangular piece that goes where is the underside of his other part of his wing, and you'll see how that all goes together. I want to make sure that's dark because it is kind of an underside. And I'm just gonna darken up a few of these pieces and then splatter where I think everywhere is necessary. Now see, I'm taking these all out, and you can see how this bird is looking much better now that he's out of his negative space. And so I have all those pieces except for the ones that I'm holding with the tape, and we'll see what we do with those in a minute. But for right now, I'm putting a little bit of glue and we'll put all these pieces together. First, I do the larger pieces first, and then I move on. So these are the wing and then that part of his breast. Then that little triangular piece, which is actually the underside of his other wing. And then I'll put the top on his head, those wonderful fluffy feathers at the top. And remember, on his legs, always put that triangular piece on first, because his leg actually goes over the top of that so that it looks like the wing is on the other side of him. And then the legs naturally would be in front because that would be the wing in the back. And then we put the beak on here. To make sure I get it in the right position there. And then this is the piece where his eye is going to sit. Now remember, I saved out that white part for his eye, and then I colored the other piece with a black marker. Now we're going to put the black marker so that his eye will be all complete. Now the only thing that remains is these little pieces that I've peeled off the back. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on them, and then you'll see what that I will then put it kind of in position and push them through. For me, it's the easiest way to handle these little tiny pieces. And so there you are. That's all done. And we're going to set him aside for now. And now I'm going to work on this panel with the stencils. And I have put a dot up in the corner of each one of these because I have determined which way I'm going to do it. You can determine it the way you would like to. But this way I know which ones I want up, because otherwise it gets very confusing. And I have a piece of bristle paper again. This is a panel of bristle paper because I'm going to do some ink blending again. I'm going to start out with spring moss, ripe avocado, and pine feather. And I'm going to start out with the spring moss and then just color all the leaves everywhere with this color. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the ripe avocado and then the pine feather. You can see how the pine feather just really, see how that looks with those three colors blended. And then now I'm going to take the next layer, which is the branches, put my tape up at the top, and blend on the branches using cocoa bean. This just takes a little making sure, getting all the color into those little skinny branches. And that looks pretty good, so I think I'll take that off. Put the next one on. This is the main berry part. I'm going to put the tape up at the top again. I'm going to start out with the yellows, the Harvest Gold and the Bright Buttercup. And I'm going to do all of them, but I'm going to use kind of a light touch with these. I actually like very much how the yellow looks with these yellow berries. See how that looks? I'll give you a little peek there. Then I'm going to add in a little bit of the pale peony and the melon berry. I'm going to use kind of a light touch here as well. You can see I'm not going real dark. I have one more of the the shading for the berries, one more stencil, and I'll use the berry sorbet for that. Add just a little bit more of that yellow. I think that's going to work all right. Now the last layer, this is, like I say, the shading for the berries, and I'm going to color this mostly with berry sorbet. Now this stencil is so pretty. I just love how that turns out, and it's going to make a nice background. I'm going to set that aside now, and I've got Bristol paper again. I'm going to cut out 3 of those foliage, one of this big flower, and then 2 smaller flowers. You can use all of them from the Into the Blooms. The smaller flowers right there, I actually traded them for Into the Blooms 2, but you can just stick to the Into Blooms 1 if you'd like. I cut them all out, and now I'm using a little bit of the Summer Sunrise and Bright Buttercup and coloring this kind of daisy-like flower. It does have a center to it as well, which I'm going to color with cocoa bean and a little bit of Summer Sunrise. And that's the center there. And then I'm going to pop that out, and you'll see how that looks there. And then I'm taking the cubes directly to the paper on this, and I am using Amethyst Allure, Berry Sorbet, and that little bit of pale peony. And I know they look crazy, but look how great they look once they get out of their little negative space. And I'll just take a brush and kind of smooth out the centers there, blend it a little bit more. Now that I got the flowers done, I'm going to move on to the foliage using that spring moss and the ripe avocado and pine feather. I just kind of layer them back and forth, and I did all 3 of them that way, so they're all done. Put a little dot of glue and put the center right there in the center of that. We're going to set those aside, and we're going to go on. This is with white cardstock. This wonderful leaf pattern has the outline that I just cut these 2 out, and then it has the detail one. And I just position this so that there's just a tiny bit of a white edge showing, as you can see there. And then I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to cut out these 2 pieces. Now that all these pieces, the 2 pieces are cut out, I'm going to push out all of these little negative pieces to reveal the design. And then I'm going to cut this little edge here, because I'm actually going to use these 2 together, kind of butted together, but you'll see how that works in a minute. But I'm just going to cut each one of these like that, and I'll cut the other one. I'll set that aside, and I'm now going to do this our berry branches, cut that with that postage stamp, has that great edge to it. And then here's all the pieces we're bringing back in that we did. And then I have a piece of vellum that fits right inside that the berry branch panel. Then I have a white card base and then a white panel that's slightly smaller than the white card base. So that one you can see it shows a little bit of border of the white card base. This panel does. I'm going to stick that down so it'll look like that it's kind of matted. And then I'm going to put the postage, the postage edged one. This was with the berry branches. I'm going to stick that down. And I'm going to put the center in too as well. I don't want to leave out the center. This one happens to cut out the center if you want it that way, so it makes a great border. Or you can do like what I'm doing here and just put that in the center. And then I'm putting down the vellum just using a little bit of repositionable tape. There's a lot that's going to be holding that down, so I don't worry about it. And then you can see for these two of these leaf edges that I had, I just put a dab of glue in the center and stuck them in the center. And then now I just put a little bit more glue in the center. I don't ever glue down the outside edges. I want that to look more free and not really stuck down and unmovable. Now I'm arranging all of our foliage and flowers, and of course the bird. Just getting a visual of where I want things to go. Now that I know, I'm going to take a little dab of glue, again, just at the base. I don't want to stick everything down. I don't want it to lose its kind of more fluid, have more of a fluid look to it. And then I have foam tape on the back of the flowers and the bird. And I'm going to just put that in position, make sure his little legs are going in the right way, and then stick down my flowers. And then what I'm going to have left to do is a sentiment. I'm going to be using this out of Just Sentiments quotes. It's an Eleanor Roosevelt sentiment, and I happen to have admired her. And I've got this on a block, and I have VersaFine black onyx that I'm stamping onto a piece of white cardstock. And then I'm going to trim it out to just create a strip. And then I have some foam squares on the back of that so I can position that. And I'm nearly done. I just have one more thing to do, and that is I'm taking some black diamond stickles, and I'm just going to put some tiny dots in the center of these flowers so that it has a little center point and a little tiny bit of sparkle to it. And then that's going to be all done. And look at how spectacular that bird looks. I just love this bird. It's one of my favorite ones out of the whole 22 different ones that are available, and or the 22 months that it's been going on. And then with the background, I think it really came together nicely. I hope you agree, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd be over the moon if you do that. And the few items I used is Feather Friends 22 Elegant Edges leaves, the Berry Branches stencil, the Into the Blooms. But everything that I used is in our supply list, which you can click the link down below, and it'll take you there along with some more close-ups and oodles more inspiration. So I want to thank you again for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time.